My name is Georganne Burke. I am Senior Vice President of the Pathway Group, which is a government relations group. I spent the last roughly 10 years working in politics here in Canada, employed in politics, but I've been in politics my entire life since I was old enough to vote, 18, in both the U.S. and Canada. Israel has been my abiding passion, and probably the key reason that I got involved in politics. And therefore, I think of myself as having a lot of experience. I won't say I'm an expert, but lots of experience with lobbying. Can someone please close that door? Thank you. I don't want to feel like I'm talking over the crowd out there. Okay, so sorry for the weirdness of this first slide, but it's how to lobby for Israel, the things you always wanted to know and were afraid to ask. So you can flip it. So the first question is, why should we lobby? I think that's a perfectly legitimate question to ask. Do we just, read the newspapers, watch the media, or do we actually try to decide that to make a decision that there's good reason to lobby? Well, it is a valid thing. The fact is that governments on all levels make decisions that can affect Israel, its relationship with Canada, and its position in the world. There are trade issues, there's humanitarian issues, as well as foreign affairs issues today, but a few. So everyone immediately thinks of the federal government as being the logical place to lobby, but the truth is, provinces and municipal governments as well have interactions with Israel, have interactions with the Jewish community, and can affect our relationship, our attitude towards Israel, and many other things. So I think it's important to recognize that lobbying is an important thing to do and that it isn't limited to the federal government. Going on, who should lobby? Every single committed supporter of Israel, Jewish or not, should use every opportunity to advocate on behalf of Israel. This kind of goes to the gentleman who kept shouting about, widening our ranks, reaching out to other people. We're talking about students, seniors, moms and dads, business people, religious leaders, Jews, non-Jews, people from every community. The fact is we have supporters, sometimes better and stronger supporters in other communities. I have a wonderful friend who some of you might know. His name is Naresh Raghavir. Naresh is a Hindu whose family is originally from India, and he, actually I think they're from Guyana, but via India, and he is probably one of the most pro-Israel people I know. Can we please close that door? Thank you. It's distracting to me. I think I'm a little ADD. Anyway, so he's the type of guy that would come out to a rally, would go and lobby on our behalf, and when he speaks, it has some credibility for our politicians, that it isn't just another Jew coming to talk to him. It is somebody from another community that sees the validity of Israel and its right to exist and its right to be a part of the greater family of nations. Okay? So I guess the main question is really, how should we lobby? And I'm going to be very, very practical here. These are very practical points, and it comes from years and years of experience of working on this issue. So the main question is to figure out who it is you actually want to talk to. Who are the main influencers in government, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal? Are they the councilors? Are they members of certain committees? Are they, in the case of the federal government, cabinet ministers? Are they staff? Okay, don't forget staff. I used to be one of those, so I know how important they are. They're the first line of defense. In fact, for an MP or a minister, get the staffers on your side and your chances are to have a much better opportunity to deal with your elected officials. Look at committee members such as the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Public Safety Committee, the International Trade Committee, the Human Rights Committee. There are others as well. So you're looking at not the usual suspects. Everybody thinks, I have to meet with the Prime Minister. I have to meet with Minister X. No, actually you don't. Chances are you're better off meeting either with your local MP, your local MPP, your local city councilor, or members of one of these committees that has an impact on Israel. So it's really thinking about it. There's trade committees, human rights committees, both on the local and the provincial level. There are lots of opportunities to talk to and influence members who are elected. But remember that those members who are elected also have staff. They have staff that work with them on those committees. And those staff have to be just as informed as the MPs, MPPs, and city councilors about the issues around the concerns around Israel and where it's heading. So we need to make sure that what we do is we talk to not just the elected officials, but to their staff as well. The next thing you have to do is to prepare. You need to examine and know well the people you're talking to. My husband always used to tell my kids, who used to regularly get in trouble for doing things they weren't supposed to do. Mainly they got in trouble because they didn't know their audience. You need to know your audience. You need to know who you're speaking to. So let's say, for example, you're going to go to visit a conservative MP, the guy that I used to work for, backbench MP from Saskatchewan, Rob Clark. On first blush, you might think, well, what would he care about Israel? Well, the truth is, he does care about Israel. He doesn't have to deal with it because there's no Jews in his riding. Okay? He's Desnathe, Mississippi, Churchill River. I don't know if any of you know where that is, but it's the northern half of Saskatchewan and the size of Germany. Okay, massive, with only 69,000 people living in it and no Jews. Okay, probably a few, but not many. So it's not an issue for him to be supportive of Israel, but he is anyway. Is he a guy that you might want to talk to? Well, maybe, because he's a member of the Law Enforcement Caucus. He's the chair of the Conservative Aboriginal Caucus. He's a member of the Aboriginal Affairs Committee. He's a member of the Conservative Caucus. He had me on his staff. Probably would be worth your while to talk to a guy like that. But you have to know what his views are. Let's say we're going to talk about going to visit someone in the NDP. Well, that's more of a challenge because we can't make the assumption that every NDP member is going to be anti-Israel. There are many who are actually neutral, and some, small number, who are pro-Israel, including their leader.
Can you name them?
Their leader, Tom Mulcair. These are not people who, there are some people within that caucus who are certainly open to hearing what you have to say. There are those who will never listen to what you have to say, and there are those who are actually supportive. Same thing with the Liberal Party. There are people in the Liberal Party that are very, very pro-Israel. There are people who just don't care about it because it's not an issue for them. And then there are people who harbor, shall we say, some negative feelings. It's important, however, that you don't make assumptions before you go to see them. You need to examine what their views are. You need to know their party's view, because even if their own personal view, for example, in the case of Thomas Mulcair, his own personal view may be somewhat different than the party's overall view, even though he's the leader of the party. You need to know personally about these individuals, MPPs, MPs, councillors, whoever you're going to meet. You need to know a little bit about them. What was their background? Were they in law enforcement? Were they an educator? Were they business people? Were they doctors? Were they lawyers? Were they whatever? Are they married? Do they have families? Have they ever been to Israel? Have they ever been in, are they religious Christians, evangelicals, who might be very pro-Israel because a lot of evangelicals are? Or are they a member of maybe one of those other Christian groups, I don't want to say the United Church, but that might be not so pro-Israel, right? So you need to know these things before you go in. Understanding who your audience is before you go in and speak to them. Okay? On lobby day, the day you actually go in, I know this looks like it's crazy to say, dress appropriately for the environment. Generally, business casual is good. Do not go in overdressed because it's intimidating. Certainly do not go in underdressed because it leaves a bad impression. Okay, so you have to go in and look right. You have to be friendly and open. You have to smile. And I know Erez is looking at the next line saying, are you kidding that you're saying this? Don't argue. Okay? And he's looking at me saying, really? She's saying that? How can that be? You have to, it's going to be very difficult for some people. It was difficult for me to learn how to not argue when I lobbied, but you can't. You have to go in to open the door to a conversation. Sometimes it's not going to be a friendly conversation, and I'm going to give you some concrete examples of that. Sometimes it won't turn out as bad as you might have thought it would have. Introduce yourself, shake hands, show that you are open and friendly. The main thing that you have to do for your part at the very beginning is you prepare a 30 to 60 second, not minute, second elevator speech. Does everyone know what an elevator speech is?
Of course.
Okay, so everybody's done it, you know, introducing yourself in your business world and so forth. So you need a 30 to 60 second elevator speech about why you're there. That will set the tone for the meeting. It should be friendly, it should be open, it should not challenge their beliefs. You should say why you're there and what you hope to accomplish, and you can do that in 30 to 60 seconds. Okay? Then give the legislator or their staff person an opportunity to respond to you. Give them a chance to say their 30 to 60 second elevator speech. Ask, you know, that just to kind of open up and say a few words. You should have prepared in advance a series of questions that will be designed to elicit their position on Israel, to get them to talk about it. You should encourage them to engage in a discussion of why you support Israel and why they do or do not agree, but don't argue with them. This is just a free exchange of ideas. Present examples to enhance your position. So you have to come in prepared. You have to come in, and once again, why am I not being specific about what those questions should be? Why am I not being specific about what your example should be? Because it's going to be different with every person you talk to. Because you're going to have done your homework before you went in. You're going to have thought about who you're talking to, found out what their background is, found out what their interests are, found out where they stand on Israel, find out where their party stands on Israel, and then you're going to know, first of all, what your 30 to 60 second elevator speech should be. Secondly, what questions you should be asking them. And thirdly, how to enhance your own arguments that you will make when you're discussing it with them in order to get them to hear your point of view and also to elicit a free exchange of ideas with them. I'm going to give you an example of a lobby day that I participated in actually it was 2004. I had just become an employee of the Conservative Party of Canada. I was their regional organizer here in Toronto. And I'm saying that because I had to make that as a disclaimer. I went up to Ottawa to be part of might have been at the time, Canadian Jewish Congress lobby day, because there wasn't any CJ at the time, I don't think. So it was probably CJC lobby day. They said to me, well, you probably want to go lobby the Conservatives. I said, why on earth would I do that? I already know where all the Conservatives are, and they're all pro-Israel, so don't need to convince them. I'd like to lobby the NDP. So, of course, Erez knows this, because he knows me well. I used to be a dipper. When I came to Canada in 1987, the first party I joined was the NDP, because I was a far left-wing Democrat from the U.S. And those were the guys I thought were in line with my thinking. I discovered they weren't, but I thought it would be an interesting exercise now, you know, a good number of years later, almost 20 years later, to have a conversation with the people that were in that party to see where they were at. The reason I left that party was because they were anti-Israel. So now I wanted to have this conversation. So I went with a group of people, actually led by the same gentleman that Ezra was talking about, Bernie Farber. He took a group of us in to meet with the NDP caucus. And we had about, out of the 19 that were in the caucus at that time, we had about a dozen of them there, including Jack Layton, who was the leader at the time. And Bernie did his little 30 to 60 second elevator speech. He did it all right. And then Jack had a chance to say a few words. And then what we did was we went around their caucus table and let everybody kind of say their piece. And what was very interesting to me was Alexa McDonough, who some of you most likely remember, was one of the most virulent, vehement anti-Israel members of that caucus. She used to refer to Israel regularly as an apartheid state, which I found so offensive I can't even tell you. But she sat there and she actually looked at us and said, I can't understand why the Jewish community is so angry with me. I do not understand why it is that that you're so furious with me. What have I done? What's wrong? And sadly, some of the people in the group kind of attacked her, and I kind of felt bad for her for a couple of reasons. Number one, she really didn't get it, which was kind of shocking. And then the other part of it was that we really weren't getting our point across. So I'm going to give you an example of what I think is actually the right way to deal with something like that. What I did was I waited till everybody finished all the yelling and screaming and whatever was going to go on there. They weren't really yelling and screaming, but they're hardcore stuff. And I said, well, look, I said, I'm going to start out with a disclaimer and tell you that I work for the Conservative Party of Canada. I just joined the team over there. I'm the regional organizer for Toronto. So you should all know that I'm a conservative. I don't want to hide that. I said, but what I am going to talk to you about is a question that Ms. McDonough asked. Why are we so mad? I said, if you think about it, the Jewish community used to have a wonderful relationship with the NDP. A lot of members of the Jewish community were active NDP members. I was one myself. I said, but what happened, I'm going to try to explain it to you this way. If I've done something wrong, and I have one of my friends come to me and say to me, Georganne, you were so wrong about that. You were absolutely wrong. You need to change your behavior. This is not right. I'm going to tend to look at the person who said it, who's a friend, someone who's been there for me, praising me when I'm good, been there to support me when times are tough. So if they want to criticize me, I'm going to have to certainly give it some thought, right? If, on the other hand, someone who is constantly slagging me, constantly talking about me behind my back and in front of my face, telling me what a worthless piece of garbage I am, what an awful person I am, comes to me and says exactly the same thing, identifies the same bad behavior, and tells me that I'm wrong, you know what I'm going to say? I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think because you're not my friend. I said, that's what the NDP has become to us. You don't recognize that Israel is a democracy. You don't recognize that Israel has a free press, has a free judiciary, has a freely elected representative body in the Knesset, has equal rights for men and women, equal rights for gay people. You don't recognize any of that. All we ever hear is that we're an apartheid state. I said, why should we listen to you? Why should we even have any interest in what you say? I said, I will take it far more seriously when someone from the Conservative caucus says to me, you're wrong. You need to change that behavior. Because I know that at their heart, they are my friends. So this is what I'm talking about. So I didn't actually I didn't yell at them, I didn't scream at them, I just gave them a concrete example of something that they could identify with in regular human behavior, which might explain why we felt the way we felt. Interestingly enough, that night I went to the legislative dinner that they had, which they used to invite all the MPs and ministers and everybody to come and have a dinner. So all of us that were lobbying were invited as well. And I'm walking down the hall, and Alexa McDonough stopped me in the hallway, and she said to me, what you said to me today, I want to talk to you about that. And I said, okay. She said, were you really serious? I said, about what? She said, well, saying that you felt like we weren't your friends. I said, yeah. I was quite serious. I said, I'm glad you got that message. I didn't come out and say it directly, but I was trying to get the point across that you can't continue to slag Israel and slag the Jewish community for its support of Israel and expect us to listen to you. So she said to me, we need to get a coffee. I want to have more conversation about this. So it opened a door. She was never going to change, I know that. And I ran into her many times and actually did have that cup of coffee with her over some point over the years. She was never going to change. But the point is that she couldn't really argue my logic. She understood it because it was actually a human interaction that we were talking about, not strictly policy. I wasn't criticizing her policy, I was criticizing her behavior more than anything else. Okay, so let's flip over to the next one. So let's say that you have all these wonderful discussions and you find that your legislator is supportive. You might even be pretty sure of that before you go in. So the first thing you do is thank him or her. Discuss things you can do together to further the Israel file. If you live in their riding, express support for them electorally and follow through with that support. We have elections coming up in the fall. I'm not making a pitch for anybody. All I'm saying is if you've got a pro-Israel person running for MP in your riding, you need to get out and help them, because we're going to need all the help we can get to keep that kind of support in our House of Commons. It's very, very important. Okay? If your legislator is not supportive, and that's going to happen in some cases, as we know. So try to ascertain why they don't support you. If they're uninformed, if it's because of lack of knowledge, offer to provide more information or an opportunity to engage with the pro-Israel community to get to better know your side of the issue. So invite them to something where they can meet people who support your viewpoint. Something like this, where they can learn and hear and meet people who support Israel and find out why. If they're irrevocably anti-Israel, thank them for their time and ask if you can send them information from time to time. Okay? That's basically what I did with Alexa McDonough. I knew I wasn't going to change her mind, but I also kept the door open and kept it friendly. So she could never actually turn around and say, that woman was a biatch. And therefore, I don't have to think about what she said. She could never say that. I was nice to her. I was pleasant to her. I was honest with her, but I did it politely, so she couldn't be negative. And she was always nice to me in the, other times after that. It was a friendly relationship. She's never going to change her mind, I know that, but I don't believe in making enemies where you don't have to. Okay, next. Lobbying doesn't end with leaving the meeting. You have to wrap up. The first thing you must do is sit down and make notes about what happened, so you don't forget. Do it while it's fresh in your mind. Follow through with any commitments you made to your member that you spoke to your counselor, whoever it is. If you said to them, I'm going to send you more information, do it. If you said to them, I'd like to invite you to an event that's coming up in my community that I think would be helpful to you to understand this issue, make sure you do that. If you've offered to help them on their campaign, you better get out and help them. That'll be something they won't forget. Send a thank you note. That is irrespective of the outcome of the meeting. You thank them for their time, because I will tell you, I know people think that legislators are lazy and they don't work. I've worked on the Hill for the better part of the last 10 years. Actually, 7 of the last 9 years I was in Ottawa working on the Hill and working for the Conservative Party. I can tell you, my days are much lighter now that I'm in the private sector. And it's not just because I'm a staffer, because the MPs work just as hard as we do. They have long days, they're away from their families, they work hard. Most of them are really, really good people in all the parties. They're there for the right reasons. So remember, their time is valuable, and they've given you 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half an hour, or an hour of their time. So we should be grateful for the fact that they've done that and express it. Ensure that you share your information that you gleaned with various groups that lobby, such as CEJA, B'nai B'rith, etc. There are lots of groups that do lobbying. The Wiesenthal Center, there's a whole bunch of people that get out and do pro-Israel lobbying. You need to let them know if you've learned anything new. There's nothing wrong with sending a note to the organization saying, listen, we had a group that went up, we spoke to them, this is what we learned. And inform your network of friends and associates of the outcome of your work. There are people that didn't go with you when you went to Ottawa, or didn't go to you when you went to City Hall, or didn't go with you when you went to Queen's Park. So, give them a call, drop them an email, and tell them what happened. Tell them, these are our friends, these are the people we can work on that might become our friends, and these are the people that are never going to be our friends, right? And these are the commitments I've made. I hope you'll make the same kinds of commitments to them. Okay? A few little extras. If possible, and this is speaking once again to our friend who was out here, make your lobbying team multicultural and multi-religious. It's better that it's not just the Jews coming to complain about Israel. It's very important that they recognize that the support is broader. We're only 350,000 people out of 35 million, 36 million now. So, and we're a small number compared to the number of people that are against us. Okay, so we need to make sure that we broaden our supporters and make sure the legislators notice that they see that. Try to include a cross-section of ages, work backgrounds, public and private sector, stay-at-home moms, retired people, a broad cross-section, so they're seeing the Canadian picture. This is a picture of Canada that they're seeing. They're not just seeing, once again, a bunch of middle-class Jews. They're seeing people from the entire spectrum of what is Canada. Keep the group manageable, 4 to 5 people maximum for meetings with one person. If you're meeting with a group like we met with the caucus, they had a dozen people there. We, I think, had about 15. You can do that because there are more of them, more of you. Kind of, it's equal. But if you're going to meet with one person, if you were going to meet with my MP, I can tell you their offices won't accommodate more than 4 or 5 people comfortably. So, and that's probably enough anyway. There should be a main spokesperson, but allow time for all of the attendees to contribute. Everyone should be given a role, and that you can do in advance. You can let someone tell a personal story. We had a very interesting personal story told at that event that I was at in Ottawa by a man who made the point when they were talking about putting up the apartheid wall, right? He said, look, he said, my daughter and her husband are living in Israel with my 5 grandchildren. He said, I worried about them every single day until there was a barrier put up between the Palestinian area and where they live. Do you know that he said, do you know that there has not been one single incident since that wall went up, since that fence went up? It was actually not a wall, it was a fence. Since that fence went up, he said, all I care about is the well-being of my children and my grandchildren. And I think that you should keep that in mind before you criticize us for trying to keep danger out. That's all that we're trying to do. We're trying to protect the people inside and keep dangerous people out. So you allow people to make, you give them the opportunity to tell their personal stories. Tell them to keep it brief, tell them to keep it friendly, but they can tell those stories. And I think that's about it. So the last one, this is how you can reach me. That's my cell number, my personal email, my name, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to help you if you want to organize a meeting with especially people up in Ottawa, although I know lots of people on the provincial level and the local level, to help you get organized, to help you figure out how to do it. I'm happy to do that. Okay, questions?
Georganne, Robert delegated some organizational stuff to me, and he was asking if he could wrap it up in about 3 minutes.
I am almost done. Just taking questions.
Okay, you talk about the NDP party. My perception is they've changed a lot with the new leader. In fact, his wife is Jewish, and their parents were in the Holocaust, my understanding. And the thing is, a lot of Jewish people are concerned about the policies, of the retirement policies of Stephen Harper. Okay? And they feel like he's diverting too much attention to the security issues in Israel. And Mulcair is really on side with them. And I just wonder, do you have any comments? Do you feel that the NDP is a lot different? And I know in the Labor Day parade, I didn't see any of these apartheid people there.
Right.
Things have changed.
I would say this. I would say that the leader has changed. The leader is not anti-Israel. I'm aware of that. Not only because his wife is Jewish, but because he's just not. However, he still has people in his caucus like Libby Davies and others. I could read you the list of people that are there.
She's not running anything.
She's not running this time, but she's not the only one. I'm just saying she's an example. There are people there in that party that still are not pro-Israel. That doesn't mean that you don't speak to them. And I made the point of saying that it's an obligation. I personally made it my obligation to go and speak to them because I feel those are the people that need to hear from us in a sane, rational way. I will tell you that if you think they've changed significantly, they have not. They have not. Okay? Yes?
When I was working in government relations and lobbying, my firm focused on preparing leave-behind documents.
That's right.
Perhaps I missed it. I don't know if you talked about it in the beginning, but would you not recommend that if you're going to lobby that you prepare a briefing note?
I would say it really depends on the situation.
Please repeat the question.
Sure. She was asking if we should prepare leave-behind documents when we lobby. Sometimes yes and sometimes no. It really depends on who you're talking to. To leave a leave behind for my boss that I work for on the Hill would be a waste of your time. He doesn't need any leave behinds. All you're doing is cementing, shoring up, refreshing his support for Israel. If you're going to someone who is very undecided, who is not clear on their position or seems to be disinterested, and you want to develop their interest, yeah, probably a leave behind is a good idea. If you've got someone who's anti-Israel, leave behinds might be a good idea there. I don't know if they're going to go directly from the desk into the circular file, but you know that you have to make that judgment. Once again, getting to know your audience, I think, is the key.
Sorry, and sometimes in those briefing notes we would also have an ask. Is it ever appropriate, and when would it be appropriate to include an ask?
Well, I don't know what you mean by an ask. What's your ask going to be? As I said, we might say to them, we'd like you to come to an event in our community and meet people and discuss this. Actually, the ask is very simple, always. We would like you to support Israel. That's what your ask is. That's why you're there. I don't think that's anything that's specific to any briefing note. That's why you're there. You're advocating for Israel, for their support.